challenges of being a caregiver as a parent of a child with disabilities.
And what's it like being an adult caregiver for older parents?
This is Enable, the disability podcast where we'll share stories, experiences, support, resources, and more for people with disabilities and different abilities. We are at Enable Podcast on social media. My name is Geoff, DeafGeoff Herbert.
And my name is Kurt Hower. Today we're talking with Alexis and MJ about being a caregiver for loved ones with disabilities. Thank you for joining us.
Alexis, please tell us about yourself and your personal experiences.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Alexis. I am a Portland, Oregon native, and I'm a mom to an adult son who's 21 now, and my son has schizophrenia.
When and how were they diagnosed?
Well, my son started showing symptoms, which, looking back now, we're able to see them a whole lot better. But he got sick at about 15 years old, and he didn't receive a diagnosis until he was 18. Road to getting that diagnosis, I'm not going to lie, it's had its ups and downs. We're doing a whole lot better now, but yeah, it's been a process.
Thank you, Alexis. MJ, please tell us about yourself and your experiences.
Thank you. I was the primary caregiver for both of my parents. My father was affected with 6 of the 10 diseases that affected Marines who were stationed at Camp Lejeune. He had bone cancer, kidney failure, and many other diseases that affected him and ended his life. And then my mother was diagnosed in 2014 with dementia, which then became full-blown Alzheimer's, which was very, very challenging. And I was their primary caregiver for 5 years. And it was very challenging, to say the least. Having to hear the diagnoses, having to deal with the changes, knowing that there was basically nothing you could do. You were watching a slow march to the end. So that was very challenging for me. But I made it through.
Now, thank you very much, MJ. Now, we're talking about both perspectives of, being a caregiver. I mean, there's lots of different ways that a person can be a caregiver for people with disabilities. Alexis, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced as a parent of someone with a disability?
Yeah, and maybe MJ would relate. I think that the things that I have struggled with as I've walked this out, and there's ups and downs, like the way that things are now are not the way they were 4 or 5 years ago. We struggle with isolation a lot because not a lot of people are prepared to deal with the heavy things that we're going through. So our world got pretty small, and I think that I've struggled with respite. There wasn't a good answer for us. Respite meaning, time for myself. Right now, that's not really that much of a struggle. It's just my son and I. We have kind of a small tribe, if you will. But there have been times where, it was really, really a struggle. And so I learned to do some things differently to make sure that I could get through that.
And MJ, what are your biggest challenges? What are some of the things that you're facing?
The biggest challenges I had in caring for my parents was that there were times where I felt alone. I'm very similar to Alexis. I felt my world got smaller because everyone was around when my parents were alive. My father was very prominent in his business community and in his alumni for his high school and his college. My mother was the president here in Detroit, Michigan, where we reside, of her sorority, very active in her church, very active with Detroit Public Schools as she was an administrator, and people were always around them and always in their circle. And I've learned, and Alexis may understand this as well, when someone is ill, and you aren't able to be the giver or the person that helps or the person who is always active. And then my mother became nonverbal. So this woman with a master's degree and my father had 2 degrees, they both became withdrawn and they weren't able to do as they did. My father went into depression because he was a tennis player and he was an ice skater and he would take care of his house and do house chores. They could no longer stay in their home. So he had to go to a senior independent living facility. My mother had to go to a 24/7 mental health and wellness care facility for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. So people who were married 50 plus years are now they're separate, and that caused depression in him. And it was just so much to balance, having to clear out their home, having to find care for them, getting calls in the midnight hour, having to run to the ER, having to take medications that were running out. It was just so much to do. And my cousins and certain people did help. But there were just certain things that they could not help with because I had to step in and care for my parents. And it was very trying. And in some cases, it was very lonely and alone. My husband helped my son, who was 8 prior to my dad's transition and 9 prior to my mom's transition. And 9 when my dad transitioned. As much as a little kid could help, he helped. But he even got to the point where he said, I don't want to be around Nana because she doesn't know me anymore. And that was heart clutch. My mother started to get to the point where she was like, hi, little boy, who are you? And my mother took care of him from 3 months to 2 years old. And they were like this. They were very tight. So just watching the challenges and the changes with my parents as they became weaker and frail and less able was very challenging. And then it affected my health. I became ill. I wound up having bilateral stroke, which is stroke on both sides of my brain, and 2 massive heart attacks, flatlined twice, because I was trying to be She-Ra, Princess of Power, and handle it on my own. And if anyone is watching this and they're a caregiver, and to Alexis, I share this with you with love, please find time to take care of yourself. Please find time to sit, have a cup of tea, block out the noise, and take care of yourself, because caregivers often don't take care of themselves, and they do as I did. They break down all the way. My mother transitioned today, 2018, on April 4th, and June 6th, 2018, while having my first vacation in 5 years outside of the state of Michigan, I had a stroke on an airplane flying to New York.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that, MJ.
Yes, sir.
I am also interested, and I've never had the experience of dealing with somebody who is nonverbal. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So my mother got to a point, let's see, 2018, about 2016, she just stopped talking. She would not talk. She would point, she would nod, she would grunt, but she stopped talking. But we know she was talking because her roommate was very, very verbal, and her roommate also had Alzheimer's, but her roommate would start saying things that I know my mother told her. My mother would tell her things, and she would say, we went to Wayne State University. We have 2 degrees. We have a bachelor's in education and a master's in psychology. And my mother's name was Barbara. My mother's best friend from childhood's name was Barbara. So her roommate, whose name wasn't Barbara, but she started calling herself Barbara. And Barbara has 2 children, and Barbara likes to travel. And I'm like, what's happening? But my mother would not speak to me, my father, any of her associates or church members that came to the house, she would not speak. What happened on the 1st of March? We went to visit her, and I'm told that there's an awakening or awareness when people know that they're getting ready to transition. And we walked into her care home, and they wheeled her around the corner, and my mother said, hi, I'm so glad to see you. Are you going to do my nails? Look at my nails. They look horrible. And my father and I are like, what? And she said, hi, Ed. My father hadn't heard his name called by her for years. And she's just talking, and we brought a meal. And we used to have to feed her because she couldn't feed herself. She ate. This is so good. It tastes like my mama's cooking. You really know how to cook. And I'm steadily like, thanks, Mom. And I did her nails, and she's like, oh, do I have on lipstick? Can you put some lipstick on? Yes, I can. And it was amazing. But the next day they called and they said she's non-responsive. She's not responding to commands. She won't open her eyes. She won't move. And we went, and when I saw my mother, I knew. And she lasted like that. And it was in her directive. If you know I can't get better, do not resuscitate me. Just do whatever to make me comfortable and keep me clean. And she remained like that for 2 weeks. But one day, it was myself, my father, and my brother. We were standing by her, and I said, Mom, it's MJ. I'm here. I'm here. And she squirrels my hand real hard. And for my dad, she squirrels his hand real hard. My brother, who only visited once, sometimes twice a year, who lives in Toronto, Canada, a 4-hour drive away, when he acknowledged that he was there and that he was with her, she did not acknowledge him at all. And I know that crushed him. But it was an experience from taking care of them to getting sick. And it took me three months to get back up to speed. Now, keep this in mind. I had a stroke on the 6th of June, 2018. My father transitioned on the 6th of June, 2019. So I had a year to get it together, and it was an experience. But people who are caregivers to both adults and children or anyone they care about have to be good to themselves, because that was a long road, and I still have some of the residual effects of the stroke. So you have to be good to yourself.
That's a great point, MJ.
Yeah.
Self-care is very important. We would also like to talk about what kind of outside help people can get in situations like this. Alexis, what kind of accommodations or support do you get as a caregiver?
Well, I have sought out support for myself as a caregiver. A little bit about what MJ was just sharing about taking care of yourself. I've had some of those same aha moments. I would say I approached this first as a perfectionist and really learned to have a healthier relationship with that aspect of my personality. And the support at the end too, I want to say here, the I felt so grateful that my manager at work also is a parent and also is a parent to a child with a disability. So that meant that I just felt comfortable speaking about what was happening in my life. And like MJ just said, think for us, there's ups and downs. And there were times where, for example, we spent a whole week in an emergency room waiting for inpatient care. That was really hard. I was able to just say out loud, though, to my manager. I think that's been, to me, that's felt most important. That I just have that comfort level, being honest and saying, I am going to be out, and it's because of X, Y, Z. Honestly, for our situation, there is a little stigma around it, and it's important that I can be open and honest about my son's health condition, and that's why I try to participate in things like this to make sure people are comfortable talking about it. But really, the biggest thing for me is just being able to say, like, this is a big part of my identity, and say that out loud, and say it at work, and say it to everyone I know, because it really is. It changed my life.
So is it different for you, MJ? And what kind of resources are available as an adult caregiver for an older parent? And something you said earlier, I was curious about is like advanced directives and how that comes into play with your parents.
Parents were very smart in their 40s. Then they talked to us about death, and they were very open about, life is so long, you've got to be prepared. And if something happens to you, here's who you'll go to. And as young adults, they stress that if something happens where I can't have a good quality of life, or I can't live at least 50% or more quality of life where I can walk and talk and take care of myself, let me go. And as hard as that was to hear, I had to honor and respect that request, legally notarized and documented in their will. And we had to honor that. As far as finding help, that was hard because finding a 24/7 care facility, first of all, they are tremendously expensive. My mother's care was $5,000 a month. Yes, sir, $5,000 a month. And we had 4,500 we could put to her care, plus we had to pay for my dad's care. And to help with the expense, I negotiated with the care provider team that I will work every weekend. I will do senior exercise classes. I will do art classes. I will cook, whatever you need me to do once a week, to the total of $500 a month. Or, you know, what can I do for 125 a week? So I literally would go, because they had, for lack of a better term, kindergarten art pictures from coloring books. I'm like, they have mental challenges, but they're adults. So I found adult coloring books and made copies, and we would color with crayons and pencils, and they would literally just sit there with those little teeny pieces of the art puzzle on the adult coloring book and make the most beautiful art pieces. I would cook, I would clean, I would take them outside. The challenge with that was it wasn't a fenced-in backyard, and one woman was very, very limber and fast, and I had to run down the driveway and catch her sometimes. But finding care for my mother took about 4 months, and in that 4-month period, I had to stay with her. At that time, I would stay with her, leave the house at 4 in the morning, go get my son who was in elementary school, get him ready for school, drop him off at Latchkey, go to work, work until lunch, leave there, go check on my dad at lunch, leave there for my dad, go back to work, go back to my mother's house to make sure she was clean and safe and had her meds and was locked away, then run back to check on my son if he could do his homework, check on my husband, then go back to my mom's house. I did that for a period of 3 to 4 months until her sister stepped in and said, I'll help. But that was so draining. But I put on this cape of She-Ra, Princess of Power, and I was not well then. I kept having headaches. I didn't know the headaches were precursors to strokes. Oh, and if you're out there and you're having headaches, don't worry. But for me, that was a sign. I just didn't know what the sign was. But finding care for them was challenging. My father was a Marine. Nobody told me, nor did I think to research, look into the VA and see what the VA can do. When I looked into the VA provided apartments for him. They provide, when I tell you he got this care facility apartment, and I walked in with dishes and towels and bedding and pots and pans, I had to take it all back because the VA stocked his apartment. The only thing he did not have that they did not give him, he wanted a desk and an office chair. Other than that, the VA took care of him. And the VA made sure that my mother was okay. They sent a VA rep to my mother and father's home once a month, and they made sure that they got together once a month. I made sure they got together every week, sometimes multiple times a week, but the VA took care of them once a month. So that was in their first year of being separated that I found out that they had that type of care. I had no idea.
So you mentioned your father in the VA.
Yes.
What about other financial resources? Are there other things available to people with parents in your situation?
What was not available to them was financial resources because of their income level. You have to be below a certain income
I
level
see.
to get government or federal support. So yes, there is support available. There even in Michigan, and I'm sure across the country, is an organization called PACE. And PACE is an organization that's attached to a hospital. And PACE will pick you up 3 days a week, take you out. You're in a medical environment. They feed you. They make sure your teeth are clean. They make sure you're healthy. They do all these things. But my mother was above the income bracket.
I
So
see.
she didn't qualify. And what it is basically, it's an organization where doctors who want to go into gerontology study these seniors who are going through and how long it takes them to go from where they are to how they de-escalate and go down in their capabilities. But it's about, unfortunately, you have to be almost poverty stricken to qualify for a lot of free services. They're there, but they did not qualify.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all that. All this information is extremely helpful and very insightful and hopefully helped a lot of people. This is Enable the Disability Podcast. Please follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Next, we'd like to discuss enabling friendship because even when it does feel like it, you're not alone. And that's one of the things we want to do with this podcast. We're not defined solely by the things we can't do or the loved one and what they can't do when there's so many things that we and they can do.
Yeah, and Alexis, I heard you mention the word tribe, and we'd love to know more about what your life is like and what you do with your family outside of work. And tell us a little bit more about the tribe and how you find people that you connect with socially.
Yeah, well, things are going really, really good now for my son. I'll say that. He's starting to have more of a typical 21-year-old life. So he does a lot of hanging out with friends, and I am so encouraged by that. And, so we're latching onto that. For myself, I have found two things that have been really helpful to me as somebody who cares about somebody else with a serious mental health condition. First of all, I got involved with NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. I was trying to make sure I remembered that right, but they have support groups and I've participated in those. And it's really helpful as a caregiver to hear from other people how they deal with things. And honestly, when it comes to mental health matters, I hate to say it, but a lot of times families are on their own. And I have learned a lot from other people versus a practitioner. Really, a lot of the tools that I have in my toolkit now are things I've met from other people who've experienced things like me and my son. Also, because my son and I went through some really tough things. His illness bloomed right along with the COVID-19 pandemic, and resources were thin. The state that we live in ranks nearly last in access to mental health care. So it's tough, and people experience some really tough things. So I'm passionate about helping others who are in that boat. And so I'm involved with an organization in my neighborhood. It's called the Sunnyside Shower Project. And we offer showers and hygiene tools to people experiencing homelessness. And I volunteer there and I'm involved in other aspects of the organization. That's really gratifying. And also meeting other people who care about the same things as me. That's how I've been building up my tribe over the last few years. So those are kind of the ways that I keep myself busy. And my son and I we have a tight knit, it's he and I, and we have a pretty tight knit group. And I think that this has made us closer. Definitely. All these things we've been through.
MJ, how about you? What do you and your family like to do for fun? And have you connected with other people who have had similar experiences?
What we like to do for fun, to be quite honest, Detroit is a river community. We share a river, the Detroit River, with the town of Windsor, Ontario, Canada. We like to go outside, be by the water, go for long walks. I like simple stuff. You can take me for a walk somewhere, take me to a park and let me sit under a tree with a book and I'm happy. But I had to give myself grace to say it's okay to not have to run and cook, not have to do everything for dad, not have to run to be with him or take him to mom or make sure they're okay, just to sit. Ironically, when my brother did not step in to help because he said he was too busy, and I was complaining about that to a friend who lives now in Boston, she was in Florida at the time. She said, well, I come to Michigan once a quarter. I'll step in and see your mom. Huh? And another friend from my church, don't worry about it. I'll go see your mom. And I had friends who would go see her and friends who would send her because she loved to write. She would just write. Even when she couldn't speak, she would write. She would write beautiful poems and stories. And so I had to just find peace in that things aren't the way they are, but I have to find peace in where they are now. My parents are with me. They're safe. They're clean. And I don't take that lightly. And I had to just find peace in that I've done the best I could with them. A lot of times I double doubted myself. Did I do the right thing? Are they okay? Was this the best I could do? And I put a lot of pressure on myself. And Alexis, I don't know how you feel, but sometimes when you're a caregiver, you always wonder, did I do the best? Did I give them the best? But I had to stop worrying about what other people weren't doing and do what I had to do to make sure my parents were taken care of. And it was challenging. And if I could just make a side comment to Alexis, I have an aunt who is severely schizophrenic, bipolar, manic depressive, and my mother was her caregiver. So when my mother got sick, a lot of what my mother did fell on me until we could find care for her. So I do understand. From a personal perspective, I understand.
MJ, I love the word grace. I think that is something we all could do with more. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Alexis, the weekend's upon us, and I'm thinking about, hey, what am I going to do for the weekend this weekend? And I'm just curious what it's like for you, going out and a social environment with family, friends. Do you experience any challenges?
Yeah, and that can be a challenge, but really depends on my son has ups and downs. There are times where he's feeling great and he's able to take in a really social experience, but I'd say we avoid crowds. We avoid crowded places, and if we're in a restaurant, we ask for a booth. And I just kind of have learned to be in tune with how he's feeling, and we may leave a social outing just because he's not feeling okay anymore. And those are just some things that we go through, but it varies. It varies depending on how he's feeling. And for me and my son, the thing we like to do is we go out to eat. We go out to eat at least a couple times a month. And that's always fun. Now that he's 21 years old, I have to, wrap my head around that. So we might order a margarita now.
Now, do you like salt around the rim or no salt?
I prefer salt around the rim.
MJ, what about you? When your parents started needing care, were you still taking them out to restaurants or the movies and things like that?
Yes.
And when you did things like that, what were the kind of challenges that you had?
The challenges were my parents both could only walk so far. Mom did not need a wheelchair at the time, but dad needed a walker. And they were just very slow. You had to be it was a definite test of patience. You had to be very slow and very patient, not so much with their pace, but because they didn't get out much, they wanted to look at everything and look at this wallpaper. This is beautiful. Look at the molding. This is great. Wow, how many plants? Let's look at and I'm like, can we just please go sit down? But I had to say, you know what? And when I had my stroke and I was in ICU for 6 days. And when I had my stroke and I came out, I was like, wow, look at all these doors in this hospital. This is amazing. So a lot of what I learned for caring for my parents, it switched and I had to be cared for. But we took them out at least once a month to a restaurant before the illnesses got to the point where it affected their moods and their ability. Their church would go pick them up. I would make sure they were dressed and clean and ready. But when it got to the point where my mother could no longer stand or function well mentally on her own, she would just kind of be a lump. And people are scared when people are different. And that's why I find myself, and Alexis, you may also agree with this, when you see people who are different and people are avoiding them, either for a disability you can see or maybe one you can't see, I'm drawn to that. I can tell a person who has Alzheimer's from a mile away, there is a face that they make. It is a blank stare with a smile. Regardless of ethnicity, gender, I can tell that face. And I'm drawn to that. I'm like, they need a hug. Let me talk to the person they're with. And I've literally had people in the middle of Target just break down and cry when I'm like, my mother had Alzheimer's too, I understand. And this woman just, I mean, she literally dropped to the ground and started crying because it's rough. It's a long march to that final step. That is the most helpless feeling in the world, knowing someone is not going to get well and you have to take care of them. That is very challenging.
Yeah.
I think you make a good point that, when you go out and you see other people that might be in similar situations or have similar struggles, it's not only good to get out yourself and take your loved ones out, but it's also a helpful reminder that you're not alone and that there are other people out there with similar situations. Me and my family and I, whenever we see another person with hearing aids, because I'm hard of hearing, they'll always say, hey, look, they're wearing hearing aids just like you. It's just it's a small world, and it's great to feel connected to people whenever possible.
Yeah, Alexis, my grandson is neurodiverse. He's 7, and he was recently diagnosed. And when we go out somewhere, from time to time, he'll have what we call a meltdown, and something will trigger this behavior in him. And people just look and stare, and often will, what's wrong with that kid? Or, he's being bad or something like that. I'm just curious, like, what do you wish more people knew or understood about your situation?
Thank you for asking that. And after going through what I did and going through what I did with my son and meeting other people who have gone through things like my son, I'm just passionate about people understanding that serious mental health conditions, it's absolutely a disability, and it's not something that the person who has it can help. They didn't do anything wrong. They're not a bad person. And oftentimes, people who are in that position are working really hard. I know how hard my son works, and I'm really proud of him because he's really self aware. And that means that that has made his journey on getting the healthcare he needs all that much better because he's open to therapy and medication. Some people really struggle with that though. And so I would just, I hope people can take that into account, that it's not an easy road and it's not it doesn't make a person a bad person. That's what I hope.
Thank you.
MJ, what do you wish more people understood or recognized about being a caregiver for older parents?
I wish more people would understand to be patient with the patients, with the older people that they're caring for. And I wish people would also realize that there are things that certain people do that they cannot help. My mother, when she was still verbal, would continuously repeat the same thing over and over and over and over. And we're out and about, and she's just asking the same question over and over. And a waitress became very impatient and raised her voice towards my mother. And I had to take her to the side lovingly and explain. I think in this world of everybody having a cell phone and using things digital to self-soothe, we've in some cases forgot the emotion or the mental connection with people. And people just need to be patient with their elders across the board. Whether you know them or not, you need to be patient with the elders, those who are physically disabled in some way or differently abled and may not walk as fast as you do, or may need more time to do things versus a younger person who can do things quicker. We need to just be patient, whomever they are. And I think because my parents are no longer here, when I see a person that is my elder, I'll stop, I'll hold the door. I've said to people, I mean, you don't harm me. I help you put your bags, your groceries in your car, because it just kind of gives me peace that I can still help someone. And I just believe this, and this is true. And Alexis, get ready because yours is coming. What you give is going to come back to you. When you are a giver, a caregiver, you're going to get something back that's just what is due. It's yin yang, it's whatever religion or faith practice or culture you want to look at it. But whatever you give, Alexis, get ready. You may not see it right now, but it's coming because you are a wonderful person. And I can see how much you love your son when you speak.
MJ, you. Same to
Oh, I'm
you.
sorry, Alexis. Hug.
You just made me very emotional. That was so wonderful. Thank you, MJ.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you so much for your courage, your inner strength, and thank you for taking time to share your stories with us. And do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share? Alexis, we'll let you go first.
I just really appreciate that we as a team value this topic, and I'm just really grateful for this experience and to talk with you all today and to learn about MJ's experience and to have that camaraderie. I really appreciate it.
I just want to say that I thank you for this opportunity. And if there's anyone out there who is watching this podcast who is taking care of their elders, an elder family member, a child, please take time for yourself and be good to yourself. It's not bad. It doesn't make you an incomplete caregiver, but you must be good to yourself before you can be good to others. Self-care is key.
That's great advice. Thank you again, both of you, for joining us, and thank you for listening. This is Enable, the Disability Podcast. We are at Enable Podcast on social media. Please like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Share this podcast with your friends and family so we can share more stories of people with disabilities and different abilities and bring us all together.